In the heart of Louisville, Kentucky, there stands an old factory where wood once echoed with the sound of destiny being carved into baseball bats. The Louisville Slugger Factory was not just a workshop, it was a place where dreams were shaped, where legends held their power in their hands, and where shadows began to gather as the years passed. At night, when the machines fell silent, workers whispered that the building was never truly quiet, that something unseen continued to move through the corridors. The story begins in the late 1800s, when young Bud Hillerick crafted the first bat that would change baseball forever. The smell of fresh ash wood mixed with ambition. But ambition often attracts things that cannot be seen. As the factory grew into an empire, so did the strange occurrences. Workers reported tools moving on their own, footsteps on empty floors, and cold air brushing their necks, as if unseen fingers traced their spine. Some believed restless ghosts of former workers lingered, while others whispered about Jinn drawn to the echoes of power, pride, and rivalry. One night, a night guard claimed he saw a tall shadow standing near the bat racks, its eyes glowing faintly, its presence heavy with silence. He swore it was not human, not ghost, but something older, something watching the factory long before it became famous. Tour guides today tell visitors that some bats vibrate slightly, as if being held by invisible hands, and that whispers sometimes follow guests through the museum halls. The building, now a museum, still carries the weight of its past. The triumphs, the tragedies, and the unseen watchers that never left. Waiting in the dim corners where history and the supernatural intertwine. The Louisville Slugger Factory was not born as an empire overnight. It began as a quiet workshop, where a young man shaped wood with trembling hands and impossible dreams. In the late 19th century, Bud Hillerick carved a bat for a struggling baseball player, unaware that this simple act would ignite a legacy that would echo through generations. As the bat struck ball after ball with unnatural precision, whispers spread that something unseen guided its creation, that the wood itself carried a presence older than the factory walls. As years passed, the factory grew, machines roared, and thousands of bats rolled off the production lines, each carrying the hopes of players and the roar of stadiums across America. But with growth came shadows. Workers spoke of hearing knocks after midnight, rhythmic and deliberate, as if invisible hands were still carving bats long after the craftsman had gone home. Some said the spirits of the earliest workers, who labored endlessly in dim light, never truly left the building, trapped between the scent of sawdust and the echoes of ambition. There were rumors that Jinn had been drawn to the place, creatures fascinated by human ambition and the energy of competition. Old workers told stories of sudden cold drafts in locked rooms, of machines turning on for a brief moment, and of voices murmuring in languages no one could understand. A senior carpenter once claimed that he saw a pale figure standing beside a pile of freshly carved bats, watching him with hollow eyes before fading into the shadows. While another insisted he felt unseen fingers guiding his hands as he shaped the wood, as if the factory itself demanded perfection from beyond the human world. As the Louisville Slugger name became a symbol of American baseball, the building transformed into a monument of fame. But beneath the fame lay layers of unseen history, layers of silent watchers, restless spirits, and ancient entities drawn to the continuous rhythm of human dreams and fears. wandering through the halls, where the past never truly sleeps, and every bat holds a story, carved not only by human hands, but by forces that remain hidden in the darkness. As the Louisville Slugger Factory continued to grow, so did the stories whispered among the workers. Stories that were never written in company records and never spoken aloud in daylight. During the day, the factory was alive with noise, with saws cutting through ash wood and workers laughing. But when the sun dipped below the horizon, a different presence seemed to awaken. Night shift employees often said the building felt heavier after dark, as if unseen eyes were watching every movement from the shadows between the bat racks. Some workers reported hearing footsteps, following them through empty corridors, slow and deliberate, stopping when they stopped, starting again when they moved. Others described faint knocking sounds on wooden walls, a steady tapping that sounded like someone carving a bat with invisible tools. There were reports of tools falling from tables without being touched, of doors opening and closing on their own, and of shadows moving against the light even when no one was near. One worker claimed he heard his name, whispered near the storage room, spoken in a voice that did not sound human, a voice that echoed with a hollow tone that lingered in the air long after it stopped. Another said, he felt a sudden icy breath on his neck, turning around to find no one there, only rows of unfinished bats standing like silent witnesses. The older employees believed these were the ghosts of men who had worked themselves to exhaustion in the early days of the factory. Their spirits unable to leave the place where they had poured their lives and sweat into shaping wood and dreams. But others believed something else lived there, something older and unseen. They whispered about Jinn, spirits attracted to places filled with human emotion, ambition, and rivalry. They believed the constant energy of competition, the roar of distant crowds, and the pressure to create perfection had drawn these beings into the factory. Strange shadows were seen near the furnace rooms, tall and distorted, appearing for a moment before melting into darkness. Machines would suddenly vibrate or switch on for a few seconds, as if something unseen was testing them, touching them, exploring the world of humans from behind a thin veil. As these stories spread, fear mixed with curiosity, and some workers refused to stay late, while others stayed just to witness the unknown, listening carefully for whispers, footsteps, and the subtle sound of something carving wood in the darkness, where no hands could be seen and no living presence could be found. As decades passed, the Louisville Slugger Factory became more than a workplace. It became a living memory soaked into wood, metal, and dust. Many believed that when the earliest workers died, their spirits did not leave with their bodies. Instead, they remained bound to the factory, tied to the bats they carved, and the machines they operated, forever walking the same paths they once walked in life. Visitors and employees alike spoke of feeling watched, as if unseen figures stood between the towering stacks of bats, their presence silent but heavy. Some night guards reported seeing transparent figures moving through the hallways, dressed in old-fashioned work clothes, their faces blurred like fog. They would appear near the carving rooms or the old offices, staring for a moment before fading into the wooden walls. One guard claimed he saw a man sitting on a stool near a workbench, head lowered, hands moving as if shaping a bat, even though no tools were present. When the guard approached, the figure vanished, leaving behind the faint smell of sawdust and oil. There were stories of a childlike apparition, a small shadow darting between the racks of bats, sometimes laughing softly, sometimes whispering words no one could understand. Tour guides later said this spirit was believed to be linked to a tragic accident in the factory's early years, though records never confirmed the details. Others claimed to hear faint conversations echoing through empty rooms, voices discussing work, wood, and deadlines, repeating the same phrases over and over like a loop trapped in time. But some believed these ghosts were not alone. They believed Jinn shared the space with them, unseen entities curious about human spirits and human obsession. In certain corners of the factory, people felt sudden waves of fear or sadness for no clear reason, as if emotions from another realm were bleeding into the world of the living. Shadows sometimes appeared beside ghostly figures, darker and more defined, moving independently, as if watching the ghosts themselves. Workers whispered that these Jinn manipulated the ghosts, guiding them, feeding on their memories, and amplifying their presence, so that the boundary between the living and the dead slowly weakened within the factory walls. As the years rolled on, these stories never disappeared. They only grew stronger, passed from worker to worker, from guide to visitor, from generation to generation, as the spirits of the past continued to wander through the endless corridors, listening to the echoes of baseball glory and waiting for someone to notice them in the dim light where history and the supernatural walk side by side and refuse to let go of the world they once knew. Among all the stories whispered inside the Louisville Slugger Factory, none were as unsettling as the rumors about Jinn. Older workers, especially those who believed in unseen realms, said the factory was a magnet for spirits, not bound by human life or death. They believed the constant energy of ambition, pride, rivalry, and human emotion had opened a doorway that attracted entities that existed long before the factory was built, long before baseball was played, long before humans carved wood into symbols of power. Some employees claimed to see tall, shadowy figures standing near the furnaces or storage rooms, figures that did not reflect light and did not cast shadows like normal humans. These shapes would remain still, watching until someone blinked, and then they would disappear. Others spoke of hearing low whispers in unknown languages, whispers that felt ancient, as if the walls themselves were speaking through unseen mouths. A few workers said they felt sudden pressure on their chest while walking alone at night, as if something invisible was standing close, studying their thoughts. There were nights when the factory lights flickered, even though the electrical system was stable, and security cameras captured dark forms moving across hallways with unnatural speed. Some believe these were Jinn moving between dimensions, curious about the ghosts of humans and the emotions trapped within the building. Workers told stories of sudden bursts of fear, anger, or sadness that had no explanation, as if another presence was influencing their minds, feeding on human feelings and memories. One carpenter claimed he once saw a figure made entirely of smoke near a stack of unfinished bats. The figure had no face, yet he felt its gaze piercing through him. He later said he heard a voice inside his head, telling him to leave the factory before sunrise, and when he turned around, the figure had vanished, leaving the air unnaturally cold. Another worker believed that the Jinn guided the ghosts, pushing them to appear more often, making their footsteps louder, their whispers clearer, as if they wanted humans to know they were there, to fear them, to acknowledge their presence. As these tales spread, some workers began reciting prayers before entering certain rooms, while others avoided specific corners of the building entirely. The idea that Jinn shared the factory with restless human spirits created a sense that the Louisville Slugger Factory was not just a place of wood and machines, but a crossroads between worlds, where unseen beings wandered freely, observing human ambition, feeding on history, and walking beside ghosts in the endless corridors where reality and the supernatural merged into a single, unsettling presence that never truly faded into silence. Today, the Louisville Slugger Factory stands as a museum, a place where history is displayed behind glass and tourists walk through polished halls. But many believe the past never left and that something still walks beside the visitors. During the day, guides smile and tell stories of baseball legends. But as evening approaches, the atmosphere shifts and the building feels different, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves are listening. Haunted tours began as a curiosity, but over time, they became a warning, a chance for visitors to experience what workers once feared. Guests often report strange sensations while walking through the exhibits. Some feel sudden chills near the old carving rooms. Others feel dizzy or emotional for no reason, as if invisible memories are pressing against their minds. Tour guides have shared stories of visitors hearing their names whispered, of children pointing at empty corners and asking who the man in old clothes is, and of cameras capturing faint shapes that do not appear to the naked eye. The echoes of footsteps sometimes follow groups, long after the guide has stopped walking. And the sound of wood tapping can be heard in rooms where no machines exist anymore. Some visitors claim they saw shadowy figures moving between bat racks, tall silhouettes that vanished when approached. Others describe feeling touched on the shoulder, only to turn around and find no one there. Paranormal investigators who visited the museum recorded unexplained voices, sudden drops in temperature, and faint outlines appearing in photographs. They believe the ghosts of former workers still roam the building, repeating their routines, carving bats in an endless loop of memory and duty. But the haunted tours also revived older whispers about Jinn. Some guests reported seeing dark, shifting shapes near the furnace areas or feeling an oppressive presence in certain rooms, as if something ancient was watching them closely. Guides sometimes warn visitors not to provoke or mock the unseen, saying that some spirits are curious, but others are not human and do not follow human rules. People have claimed their devices malfunctioned, their recordings corrupted, and their thoughts filled with sudden fear after walking through specific sections of the museum. As night deepens during these tours, the line between entertainment and reality becomes thin, and visitors begin to question whether the stories are merely legends or if the factory truly remains alive with unseen watchers, wandering ghosts, and silent Jinn moving through the halls where history, ambition, and supernatural presence continue to intertwine in the shadows that stretch across the polished floors and dark corners where no guide dares to linger alone, and every echo sounds like a voice calling from another world. And every whisper feels to leave an invitation to the darkness that refuses to leave the place where baseball history and the unseen exist together in Ranasum refuses to give all angry hitters. Haunting continuity. And so the Louisville Slugger Factory stands today, polished and preserved, celebrated as a monument of baseball history, yet quietly breathing with memories that never faded. The bats remain still behind glass, but some swear they still feel a presence around them, as if unseen hands still hold them, as if unseen eyes still watch every visitor who walks past. The whispers of ghosts and the silent movement of Jinn are no longer dismissed as mere stories, because too many people have felt them, heard them, and seen them. The factory may be a museum now, but in the darkness, when the last visitor leaves and the doors are locked, the footsteps may begin again, the shadows may stretch and move, and the unseen residents may continue their endless watch over the empire they never left.